The Jinhao 9019 is a very large cigar-shaped fountain pen, fairly reminiscent of the 2000 US dollar Pilot Namiki Emperor. However, this won't cost anywhere near that much. You can usually find it for about 10 US dollars. It's available in a wide variety of colors. The one that we have here is a deep opaque blue, but I also have it in fully transparent. The finials are both rounded. The bottom finial does have an indent where there was an injection molding gate, but the top finial is rounded and smooth. The clip is very much in that Pilot style. It's triangular in shape with Jinhao at the top and a metal ball at the bottom, which is springy and functional. The cap tapers down to a metal gold band, which reads Jinhao Dadao, which roughly translates to sword or long knife, and then number 9019. There's a slight step down to the barrel, and the cap comes off in 1, 2, and about a half turns, which does run on the high side, and it reveals a two-tone stainless steel nib. This one has the Jinhao Chariot logo, Jinhao, and then an M for medium. You can also get this in fine and extra fine, and I have the extra fine version in the clear model. The section starts with a flare-up and then a gradual taper to threads, which are smooth to the touch, and then a slight step up to the barrel. The barrel then slowly tapers down to the rounded end finial. In the hand, the pen is well balanced and fairly lightweight. The section is thick, so if you have small hands, it might be troublesome, but if you have large hands, you might find it extremely comfortable. And the cap posts deeply and securely. It doesn't backweight the pen at all. It maintains a very good balance. In terms of size comparisons, here's the Jinhao 9019. A typical Pilot G2 rollerball pen, and your standard Sharpie. Before we disassemble the Jinhao 9019, I wanted to take a second here to compare it with another large Jinhao model, and that's the X159, which I recently reviewed. You can see both pens are overall very large pens. However, the 9019 is a bit thicker than the X159. Let's take a look at these pens uncapped. Uncapped, both pens are about the same overall length. They both use the same Jinhao number 8 size steel nib, and the section of the 9019 is a bit longer than the X159. Let's take a look at these pens posted. Both caps post well on these pens. However, this is where we see a larger difference between the two. The 9019 is now significantly longer than the X159. Disassembling the Jinhao 9019, I selected the clear version for this just for demonstration purposes. Cap unscrews. There isn't a cap liner, just a little step right here to seal off the nib, so there shouldn't be any need to disassemble this further, but if you really wanted to take the clip off, you could take a socket wrench and unscrew that nut. The section unscrews from the barrel, and the converter unscrews from the section. This is a new converter for Jinhao. It's oversized, which is great to see in such a big pen. It gives you a good ink capacity. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to disassemble this. I thought if you twisted the back sleeve that maybe it would come apart like their old models, but unfortunately this one just spins in place. And then our nib and feed can be unscrewed from the section. They are held together by a collar, and you can pull them right out from there. Then we have the nib and the feed. And it's interesting to note, you can see there's some sheen on this feed. Those are remnants from some ink that Jinhao must be using in their quality control process. So that's nice to see. Something that you really only see at more expensive price points. But at this point, the pen is fully disassembled. To reassemble, we'll start with the feed and the nib. Line the nib on top of the feed. And then we'll grab our collar, and if you look closely, there is a little square notch in the feed that gets lined up to this square cutout on the collar, just like that. And that'll help prevent the nib and feed from twisting inside this collar. So that's a nice little feature to have. The nib and feed and collar get screwed into the section, and then the converter gets screwed into that. We'll then take this and put it into the barrel. And if you look closely towards the bottom of the barrel, there are some ribs. Those ribs are there to help reinforce the shape of this barrel, but they also butt up against the back of this converter, which helps prevent it from rattling inside. And then lastly, we'll screw on our cap. And now we're ready to ink up. Inking up the Jinhao 9019, today I selected Diamine's Blue Velvet, which I have in this large bottle. I selected it for a couple reasons. Number one is it matches the color on this dark blue model pretty closely, and I wanted to do a side-by-side between the medium that's on this and the extra fine that's on the clear. But also, the ink bottles for the 30 milliliter Diamine inks are a little bit too small to fit this large section. So let's go ahead, unscrew the cap, take the cap off the pen, take the barrel off the back, make sure your converter is screwed all the way down, submerge the nib into ink, and drop ink. Looks like I didn't get quite far enough down. I'm gonna put the nib a bit further down and try that one more time. There we go. You can see these oversized pens are a little bit tricky to get filled properly. I'm gonna expel the ink one more time and draw it back up just to try and get a nice full fill. There. Go ahead and wipe off the excess ink. You can see it really just touched the nib, which is pretty surprising. We will put the barrel on the back of the pen. Followed by the cap. Cap up our ink. And we're ready to write. Okay, writing with the Jinhao 9019, cap unscrews. And this one we have a extra fine. Stainless steel nib. And whatever Jinhao's doing with quality control, it's working. This nib is very well tuned. It's nice and smooth with a little bit of feedback, just the way I like it. Our ink. Is Diamine. Blue Velvet. For flex, I'll turn the page. Not much flex to be had. You do push out a little bit of extra ink though. And then for reverse writing, not getting much out of this extra fine. Really no ink flow at all. So not a good reverse writer, at least not my version. And while we're at it, let's take a look at our medium on the deep blue. So this is also Jinhao 9019. Hopefully you can already see we do have a lot more ink flow and a much thicker line. Again, this is a medium. Same ink line variation. That was me at the beginning of that. I just didn't have the nib on the page. Again, not much line variation to be had with the medium. You are pushing out a little bit more ink, but that's about it. And for reverse writing, clearly a significant improvement over the extra fine. It's actually a pretty smooth reverse writer, and you do get a much thinner line going in reverse. So I would say for the medium, that's a good candidate for reverse writing. So what do I think of the Jinhao 9019? I really like this pen. I think that it has a nice minimalist look to it, especially with the lack of trim on the barrel. It's a good writer, as you saw with that medium nib especially. The extra fine was also equally smooth, just maybe not quite as versatile with the line variation. I like the clip. The clip does function very well, but it bothers me a bit because it does really emulate the Pilot style, and I wish that they maybe would have been a little bit more original with that portion of the pen. But in the hand, the pen is very comfortable. I do personally find it more comfortable than the X159, perhaps because of the larger section. And the cap posts deeply and securely, which is nice. You don't have to worry about, you know, this cap rolling off the table or losing it. Areas where I think this pen could be improved, I don't have very many. One thing, which I also felt with the X159, is I wish that you could make this a eyedropperable pen. I think on the translucent and transparent models like this one here, it would be really cool to see so much ink sloshing around. And if they figured out a way to incorporate a Japanese eyedropper, which is basically the same as a regular eyedropper plus a shutoff valve, I think that would be a fantastic pen on today's market. The only other area where I think this pen could really be improved is on the design of these threads. They have a lot of give as you're going in and out, but also they almost feel like they're cross-threading. They aren't. I've checked to make sure that I'm not grinding away at this plastic, but here, let me bring this up to the camera, maybe you can hear it. It just doesn't give you a great sense of quality, which, I mean, you can only expect so much at this price point, but also it'd be pretty easy to make these threads a little smoother so that you do have a better experience. But with all that being said, I do think it's a fantastic pen. If you are by chance on the market for a $2,000 Namiki Emperor, this is a very affordable option to give yourself an idea of what it's like to hold one in your hand, albeit not with the same quality of craftsmanship. But besides that, I really do enjoy this pen, and I think it's a valuable addition to any collection. And that just leaves me to say, thank you for watching.